Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a plucky Charles Coulombe.
Plucky?
Yes.
You mean to say that I stand up and I take advantage of the situation, and I'm not going to let myself be put down by my misfortune. I'll pull myself together and move on.
Right.
All right. David and Goliath.
Yeah, kind of. Except
So,
who's Goliath
David,
in this?
Who's Goliath?
Yeah.
That's my question. Do you remember Davy and Goliath?
No.
No, don't know Davy and Goliath. Well, that was a kind of a claymation show like Gumby that was produced by Lutherans. There's a big thing when I was a boy in the 60s. Davy and Goliath. And Goliath was this dog who talked like this, Davy. And Davy was the young boy, and he was always learning life lessons. And Davy would teach him sometimes. And there was often a Lutheran-esque thing at the end. Well, some very funny person did a parody of this, which my sister-in-law hated because she grew up with the David and Goliath things, and really hated Davy and the son of Goliath, wherein Goliath is turned into this demonic thing, and basically Davy is turned into a mass murderer, like the son of Sam.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very funny, very dark, but very funny. Time to cleanse the city, Davy. Oh, Goliath, why do you make me kill people? Well, Davy, when a person's a psychopath, they invent imaginary reasons to justify their abnormal behavior. And I'm your reason, Davy. Oh, gee, thanks, Goliath.
That's really dark. That reminds me of the movie, for some reason, it reminds me of Death to Smoochie, where it's like this juxtaposition between cutesiness and the dark underbelly of kiddie shows.
Oh, they are terrible. They're awful. I remember, who's the comedian in, he was in Elf. And,
Will Ferrell.
Yes. He has a very funny line about clowns. I don't know if you've ever heard him talk about it.
No. What do you say?
Yeah, well, he says, most people find clowns very funny. I don't. For me, they're scary. I think it's because when I was 5 years old, my dad took me to the circus, and a clown killed my dad.
Gosh. Gosh. What is that from? Elf?
I don't know what. No, not Elf. I don't know what it's from. I just remember him saying it. I thought it was funny. Because I've heard people say clowns are scary.
Yeah.
I don't find them scary. Yeah. I guess because I've been ruled by them for most of my life.
Ha ha ha
what?
Ha ha.
What? Oh, what? I'm supposed to be frightened of my rulers? Is that what you're telling me? I'm an American, dagnabbit. And let me tell you something. Ours is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And our leaders, we have the best government money can buy.
That's what I always say.
That's right. And speaking of which, and leadership, today should be a very special day for you.
Yeah. Tell us. Go on, Charles. Go on.
Why are you breathing so heavily? You seem like a cross between apprehension and impatience. Why is that?
Because I see the UN pin on your...
Oh, this?
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a United Nations pin, ladies and gentlemen. If you can't see it, it's got the globe that adorns the beautiful light blue and white flag of the United Nations. And with it is my Telstar tie, which tie commemorates that feeling of going forward into the future in the early 60s. Sort of a combination of the UN globe, the NASA logo, and the demisphere of the New York World's Fair in '63, '64. The great, wonderful world tomorrow, Tomorrowland, basically. But since you ask, I'll tell you. In real time, we're doing this show on September the 18th, 2021. Oh, it's not that bad, not yet. 60 years ago today, the second Secretary General of the United Nations, Dag Hammarskjöld, was in the Congo on his way to negotiate a peace settlement during the UN intervention in the Congo. His plane crashed, and he and all aboard were killed. And so today is a day of commemoration for Dag Hammarskjöld, and a day in which we can all rededicate ourselves to his ideals and the ideals of the United Nations, a world at peace.
Yeah, world at peace is good.
Yeah. Oh, are you against that? You want a world at
No.
war?
No, absolutely not.
You want a world at peace?
Yeah, there's a lot more profit for a world at peace.
Oh, you listen to you. When you used to go trick or treating for UNICEF, and this should be an important day for you as a trick or treater for UNICEF.
Why?
Because UNICEF is a major UN organization. It's the United Nations Emergency Children's Fund, or Children's Emergency Fund. Yeah.
Okay.
And you know who their major spokesperson used to be when he was alive? He gave it up after he died.
Well, I would assume he gave it up after he died. Yeah.
He did. He did. He retired from the role after his death.
Who?
Danny Kaye.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Danny,
see?
That's nice.
Yeah. You know who one of the leading UN spokesmen is right now?
No, I don't. I'm sure it's someone I don't know.
No, you're wrong. Oh gosh, what's his name? He was, I can see his face. He was Madonna's first husband.
Sean Penn.
Yes. Sean Penn. What about the children?
I'm in favor of them.
What about a sustainable future for all mankind?
Absolutely.
What about the goals, the development goals of the United Nations?
What does that mean?
That means the United Nations want to help the world develop because they're like poor places and stuff.
Okay, sure.
See? So you're behind the UN in their march toward wonderfulness for everybody.
Absolutely. I'm all in favor of wonderfulness and positivity.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So you'll join me in standing up for the United Nations.
Yes.
Good.
For the common good.
Because it's a one world conspiracy to take away everyone's rights.
What the hell?
What?
How did you get there?
I just did. The UN is constantly pushing abortion, birth control, gender issues. That's all that comes out of the UN. And do you know why?
Why?
Because the United Nations is a puppet of the governments that support it.
But you just said all those good things, though.
And now I'm saying bad things. What's your problem?
Well, I'm in favor of the good things.
But you're against the bad ones.
Yeah. So can't we support it out of a sense of idealism?
But what about the bad stuff?
Well, we're a fallen people in a fallen world.
So would you say the same thing about the European Union?
Perhaps not.
How about the United States government?
Aren't there different goals? with these things compared to the United Nations?
Well, it depends. I mean, some people say that the United Nations is a tool through which the United States dominate the world. Others say the United Nations are a means by which the third world can siphon money off the United States.
Can't both be true?
Yes, they can.
Because if we're giving money, then it's in exchange for what?
Ah, therein lies the rub. However, there's one thing you can say for the UN.
Okay.
They have 3 headquarters.
Oh, good.
Yeah. You know, their center, and thus the capital of the world, you won't be shocked to hear this, is New York, Manhattan.
Of course.
However, they have 2 subsidiary centers. One is in Geneva, the old League of Nations complex, and the third is here in Vienna.
Wow, did you go? I didn't know that. Did you go visit that?
I have not. I didn't get the chance before COVID hit, and it's been closed to tours. But you better believe that I have taken the UN tour in New York, and I definitely, as soon as I can, I'm going to see the one in Vienna, and I definitely want to see the one in Geneva too. And Geneva has more than just the what do you call it, the League of Nations and the UN thing. They've got the headquarters of the International Red Cross. They have the headquarters of the International Olympic Committee. I mean, as far as international stuff goes, Geneva's hopping and bopping. The World Health Organization is there.
Incredible.
But wait, there's more. You know it's headquartered in Rome?
What?
The Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO of the UN. And their headquarters is in the old Mussolini's old Ministry of the Colonies.
Okay.
But wait, there's more. In Paris is the headquarters of UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Social, and Cultural Organization.
Well, all right. Go on.
But wait, there's more. There are regional headquarters for the UN around the globe as well. In the Americas, they've got a big building in Santiago, Chile. In Asia, it's Bangkok. In Africa, they have 2 in Nairobi and Addis Ababa. Isn't this exciting?
Yeah, no, go on.
You want to become part of the whole UN family.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, they have a lot of organizations that are subsidiary organizations. The World Court in The Hague, in the beautiful Peace Palace.
You know, a question just popped into my head about the United Nations. How do they make money?
Well, they subsist off voluntary donations from the members.
Okay. Who are...
The members are the various nations of the earth.
Who gives the most?
The United States.
Who gives the second most?
Oh, Russia or China.
So aren't there like 4 controlling countries? Russia,
5.
China, United States,
Britain and France.
Britain, and France.
Those are the big 5 of world. See, in origin, the United Nations were actually the allies against the Axis in World War II. That was where the name first came. And so
are the controlling countries just simply those who give the most money?
No, it's the other way around. The controlling countries give the most money because they're the controlling countries. But basically, the UN's the biggest bodies in terms of the organization are what are called the General Assembly, which has the representatives from all the member states. Then there's the Security Council. Now, the Security Council is basically the top body that makes the real decisions. And that includes 5 permanent members, who are the big 5 of World War II, And then I forget how many rotating members they have, but the other members of the Security Council rotate from among the membership. I forget if they get elected or if it's automatic. And then, of course, the man who runs the show, the executive leader of the organization, who was appointed by, I think, by the Security Council, or maybe he's elected by the General Assembly. I forget how they get it. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. Point is, the top man is the Secretary General, who is the equivalent of the Prime Minister, and Dag Hammarskjöld was the second one. And as an interesting sideline, peacekeeping falls under the Security Council, and the UN peacekeeping forces scattered in various places around the globe all answer to him. But there's not a permanent army. So what happens is when they decide they're going to put together a peacekeeping force, the Secretary General has to go to the different member states and ask for recruits, for troops, and equipment. And they do get paid for it. So some countries like Nigeria, for instance, and India and so on, make a bit of money, basically renting out troops to the UN.
All right.
You excited?
I'm excited for peace.
Oh, I'd like to see that on a bumper sticker. I'm excited for peace. Or better, another Californian excited for peace. How does that sound?
Another Californian?
Excited for peace.
It's okay, I guess.
A piece of this, a piece of that, you know.
Oh, I see.
Now, all kidding aside, even though 4 popes have endorsed the UN up to the gills, I have my reservations about the whole thing.
You're wearing the pin though.
I know. So what?
Okay, go on. What are your reservations?
Well, as I say, the social stuff that they push, usually the worst stuff gets mitigated by a coalition of the Holy See, which has observer status and helps organize these coalitions. Sometimes a couple of Latin American countries. But you know, the biggest group of nations that fights moral corruptitude being made into law by the General Assembly?
What?
Who would you guess? Who would be the largest group that would oppose abortion, the largest group that would oppose gay marriage, the largest group that would oppose anything like that? Who would you
Poland.
guess? Well, they're one, but they're not a group of countries. But you're right, Poland usually votes. Think of a block of countries.
A block of Africa.
Some.
Well, I don't know then.
Muslim countries.
Oh, okay. Duh.
So basically, you get a coalition of Muslim countries, a few Latin American countries, countries like Poland and a few others like that. So my friend Austin Roos runs a sort of a lobbying group at the UN, the CFAM, that work to try to keep that sort of stuff at bay. They do an important work, I think.
Yeah.
It's sort of like pro-life people in Washington.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
now you know.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. You know what today also was?
What?
The feast of St. Joseph of Cupertino, the Flying Friar.
I like St. Joseph Cupertino.
I do too. We got a city in California named after him, so you know he's important.
Yeah.
Cupertino. But
yeah. Good
but
movie too, by the way. Ricardo Montalban, good villain.
Yeah. But the great thing about St. Joseph of Cupertino is that he was such a miraculous guy, and he lived relatively recently. Is a good sign that the age of miracles is not yet over, which is something we always need to remember because it's easy to get discouraged. But wait, there's more. You know what yesterday was? Did you wear your American flag pin yesterday the way I did?
No.
So you hate your country.
It's not one or the other. How
You don't
dare
wear your
you? How
flag
dare
pin.
you, Charles?
You don't wear a flag pin on a patriotic holiday. What am I supposed to think?
What was the patriotic holiday?
It was Constitution Day.
Yeah, you're so patriotic, Charles. You called the Constitution a deaf, dumb, and blind king.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to commemorate its birth. Besides, having reservations toward the Constitution is not the same thing as hating America. So there.
All right, there. You got me.
Yeah, but why do you hate America?
I don't hate America. That's a loaded question.
When did you stop beating your wife? What? I'm just giving you the usual kind of fair treatment journalists give people.
Yeah.
But seriously, folks, there's more involved as well. And you know what that is?
What?
Well, I just got back yesterday from Ljubljana, Slovenia. And I really, really loved Ljubljana and Slovenia. A shout out, however, to all of my friends in Croatia as well. I will come back to Zagreb soon. I promise. I love Croatia.
Superfan Martin is in Zagreb, isn't he?
He sure is. He sure is.
Yeah.
Superfan Martin, and he is now married.
Oh, wow. Congratulations, Martin.
He followed your footsteps. He said, well, if it's good enough for Vinnie Franchini, it's good enough for me.
The institution of marriage?
Yeah. Well, he figured it was if it didn't destroy you, it wouldn't destroy him, is what he was thinking.
Ah, okay.
And wait, there's more. Tomorrow, you know where I'm going to?
Where?
Hungary.
Nice.
I'm going to Budapest. So I'll be there for 4 days. Amongst other things, the launch of the new version of the European Conservative, which is kind enough to have me write for them. So that's a shout out for the European Conservative. And wait, there's more. While we're speaking of shout outs, last week when I was in England, I did in fact stay the first night with my godson in Cambridge, Ruru Ghoshal.
Yeah, I think he made a comment that you didn't name drop him last episode.
He did make that comment, and I said, patience, grasshopper, and now I'm naming him. So, Ruru, I know you're hearing this. You try to shame your old godfather, it's not going to work. I'm shameless. You ask Vinny, he knows.
Yeah, Charles is absolutely shameless.
Well, you said those is a bad thing. But now there's bad news that I have to share.
Oh.
Next weekend, I will not be here. I will be in Denmark. That's the bad news. You want the good news?
What's the good news?
That should be the last Saturday I miss out for some time to come.
Okay. So we'll be skipping a week.
Yeah.
We can make up for it though. We've got some holidays coming up. We can do some special episodes coming up, I think.
Yeah. Well, I have some. It won't be the long autumn break we used to have, but yeah, as you say, we definitely have some holidays coming up here. So we'll definitely do it, and we've got to do something special for Christ the King at the end of October. Especially now.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe we should make a determined effort to have patrons and others, if they've got any questions about the Feast of Christ the King, social kingship of Christ, that kind of thing.
Right, yeah, send them in.
Now we'll have a special Christ the King episode. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, let me see. I think that's I've delayed as much as I could. Do we have any memes of production?
No memes worth nationalizing this week. I'm sorry, Charles.
So, in other words, all you've got are a bunch of loser memes that are you might as well leave in private hands.
That's not very charitable of you, but yes.
Speaking of charity, and apart from trick or treating for UNICEF, I was wondering if you noticed that Tyrone was gathering donations for the retired security events fund.
Yes.
Was this authorized?
Yeah, I allow it. He does great work, so a few well-earned benefits here and there.
Well, benefits. Don't the security people get pensions?
I mean, no, but
that answers that question. All right, I take back everything I was going to say. Tyrone, I know you can hear me. You're in the other room. You're not fooling me for a second. You have my approval. I didn't realize you guys weren't getting pensions. I thought it was kind of a shakedown, so forget it. Well, you know what, though? This is warning Lydia and everybody else in the secretarial pool. You know what's going to happen? They're all going to start charging. They don't have pensions. They're all going to set up these ersatz relief committees now. Even when you go to the executive dining room, it'll be like, all right, here's your chit, Mr. Franchini. Oh, and would you give $5 for the dining room workers fund? That's gonna look pretty cheesy when you bring in business guests. Can you imagine? You got somebody coming in, I don't know, from Angelico Press or somebody, and you're showing them around, and then you bring them up for lunch. The hand goes out. Would you contribute to Chef's Relief?
Well,
I think you should reconsider your alternatives. Get your mind right.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of... It shows how generous we are that we're cooperating with various charities and funds.
Yeah, that's generous. Right. You let them raise their own pension money. That's really wonderful. I'll tell you what, that's Catholic social teaching to the nth degree. You're letting them raise their own pensions while they work. That's really something. I don't know what to say. I've never heard of a business that did that. This is better than Social Security. Learn while you earn. Oh man, that's great. But see, this is really tough for people like the motor pool and all that who never see the public. Who are they going to shake down? I can see what it's going to be like when I get back home. Where to, Mr. Coulombe? The Central Library downtown. Great, that'll be $25, please. What? Well, yeah, it's for the motor pool pension fund. Gosh, I can see how things are going to be run these days. Man, you're going to get a box of books in the printer. Yes, here's the books. Oh, and would you sign this chit, please? Nothing gets done. Nothing gets done at Tubman House unless you pay up. Lydia, could you get me a cup of coffee? That's $10. Everything comes with a price tag.
All right, Charles. I
can see it now at the commissariat. Would you like some silverware with that, Mr. Coulombe? Yes. $4, please. It's for the commissariat workers' pension fund.
You have to pay to play, Charles.
Yeah, I guess you do. I guess you do. All right. I withdraw all objections.
All right.
It's the hidden hand of the market at work.
All right. All right. Questions.
Yeah, I just asked them. You
I.
lost
All right.
it. You know, your great uncle. Yeah, your great uncle used to be the king of this kind of thing, but it's called protection in those days.
All right. Let's go. Let's move on. Let's get out of this hole, Charles. All right.
All right, fine.
Move your camera down just a tiny bit.
I don't know. I kind of like having my double chins hidden.
Oh, there you go. All right. Question from French guy number 1. Warm
Okay.
greetings and felicitations to the Baron of Books, the Commissar of the Commissary, the Master of Mackerel, Thane of the 13th Floor, the newly nuptial and not quite normal, but in a good way, Don Vincenzo, and many congratulations on his wedding. Yay. Thank you, French guy. And of course, similar greetings to the Kaiser of Kvetch. Okay. The Archduke of...
I don't complain.
Is that what Kvetch is?
Yeah, kvetching is complaining. I don't complain. When have I ever complained?
All the time?
All I've done is point out certain unpleasant realities you don't want to face. That's all. That's not complaining. I never say it's wrong or bad.
All right, Charles. All right. Have it your way. The Archduke of Aristocratic Anecdotes, Prince of Papal Parables, the Tsar of the Bizarre. That's good.
That's a title I can get behind, the Tsar of the Bizarre.
That's really good.
Oh, man. That is good. French guy number 1, thank you. The Tsar of the Bizarre.
The very great but not yet late Charles Coulombe. Yay. You wouldn't believe how long it took me to come up with those alliterative titles for the both of you. Anyways,
we're grateful.
I present 2 questions which I hope the above mentioned scholar shall answer. Firstly, Austrian history and World War I have always fascinated me. One thing I find particularly interesting is the concept of the United States of Greater Austria. The proposed reorganization of Austria-Hungary into a federalized state under the Habsburg crown. It is my understanding that one of the reasons for the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was that the terrorists who orchestrated the despicable deed were deeply terrified that if Archduke Franz had become Kaiser and implemented this proposal, he would have become so popular amongst the Slavic population of the empire that they never would have achieved their goal of a united Yugoslavia. It is also my understanding that Blessed Emperor Karl was in favor of the idea as well, and had even taken steps to implement it in the latter days of World War I. I have found very little information on the proposal apart from the above, so my question for the man who literally wrote the book on Blessed Emperor Karl is, what would this confederation have looked like? Would it have been a more centralized union such as the United States, or a looser confederation like what the European Union is supposed to be? And would it have had any chance of success? Or was the genie of Slavic nationalism too far out of the bottle to be stuffed back in?
Well, that's a really, really good question. To answer it, yes, Franz Ferdinand, he was in favor of 2 very important things, actually. One in terms of interior politics, the other exterior politics. Interior politics were, as you say, the United States of Austria. This would have been, how do I put it? Where it would have been different from, say, the EU or from the Commonwealth, is that the monarch would have had a great deal of executive power in each country and would have been really responsible for keeping them together as as a whole. But it would have been somewhere in between. because the whole point of federalizing them was that a number of the nationalities, the Romanians in Transylvania, the Slovakians, Ruthenians, and so on, had, shall we say, uh, unpleasant experiences being ruled by other nationalities. So the trick is that each of them basically would have had the same amount of autonomy that Hungary had from Austria. The other thing, however, that Franz Ferdinand was very much in favor of was a realignment in Europe. He felt that Austria was far too dependent on Germany, and that what they needed was to reach out to Russia, Britain, possibly France. And of course, if you think about it, an alliance between Austria, Hungary, Great Britain, and Russia would have nothing else to serve to keep France and Germany quiet, which would not have been a bad thing. Karl, on the other hand, he also supported the idea that his uncle was in favor of, but he couldn't really pursue it too well for most of his short reign because he was almost immediately required by the Hungarian government to be crowned king, which meant that he had to swear to maintain the constitution as it was then inviolate, which would rule out any kind of federalization. He hoped to negotiate with them after the war. Of course, that didn't happen. He did finally, at the end of the very end of the war, the Hungarian government had other problems of their own, so they were willing to allow Croatia, which is a little difficult to explain, but basically, in Austria-Hungary, the Emperor of Austria was King of Hungary, but as King of Hungary, he was also King of Croatia. But there were areas like Dalmatia that were under Austria. So the deal that was made for Croatia at the end of the war was that Dalmatia was united with Croatia into a separate kingdom, equal to Hungary rather than subordinate. So for about a week or so at the end of the war, the Kingdom of Croatia was a separate entity from either the Empire of Austria or the Kingdom of Hungary. Trialism, it was called. It didn't last long, but it did represent a tremendous advance toward what Karl had hoped for. Now, the other interesting thing was that as far as foreign affairs went, Karl also believed and then saw that his uncle was right and that the German alliance would, in the end, ruin Austria. He had the further thing when he was younger, before he was emperor and before the war, he traveled to Alsace in Germany and came to the conclusion that it really did belong in French hands, which is why he was quite willing to discuss giving it up. He also was very much a friend of the Polish people and would have liked to have seen Poland reconstructed, whether under a Habsburg or himself or a third alternative. It is interesting that there were a group of conservative Poles in Krakow who wanted to see the reformation of the old Polish kingdom under the Habsburgs. And that would have been a very fascinating thing had it come to pass, because you basically would have had a Central European power from the Adriatic to the Baltic, which would have been something. But of course, neither the Russians nor the Germans would have appreciated it. So, anyway, as far when he died, he died, Karl, that is, declaring that he was suffering that his peoples might come back together. And of course, after World War II, his son, especially given the fact that most of his former territories, except for Austria, were occupied by the Soviets, they came to feel the best way to achieve what his father and his great uncle, and indeed the Habsburg family mission had always been, would be best served by working for a unified, free, and Christian Europe, given that with the Soviets there on the one hand and the Americans on the other, restoration seemed very unlikely. So I figured that was the best way to pursue it. Now we are in a very different situation where the EU has become, after he worked very hard to bring the countries of Eastern Europe and Central Europe into the EU, but now the EU is extremely different to what both he and its founders envisioned as a Christian sort of thing. So it's kind of ironic, but the the only way in the immediate that I could see a chance of that happening, of those goals being accomplished now, would be of a Central European Federation, certainly with Austria, Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, maybe Poland, maybe Romania. Some tighter sort of organization than they have. And with the enemies they've got, I mean, the insanity that we have in the West, Uncle Vladimir in the East, and the Muslims to the South, they've got a lot of external negative reasons why they need to pull together. But they have a lot of internal hatreds. And I think really that only the Habsburgs and the church can help them overcome them. So it's ironic to me, but where Otto gave up working for restoration because he thought that to achieve the goals he really needed to focus on European Union. Today, I think to achieve a real decent European Union of the sort that he and the founders wanted, the best thing to do is to have a restoration over a Central European Federation. Or to put this another way, it seems to me the best way to accomplish what Archduke Otto wanted is to return to the ideas that he felt he had to abandon. So, my little joke, is that I would love to see there be a medical syndrome peculiar to the head of the House of Habsburg. It would be coronation syndrome. You keep getting crowned in different cities, so you've got a constant rash where the anointing is, furrows in your hair where the crowns always get placed.
Oh, okay.
So many coronations, so little time.
Wow.
And you'd have to make some up. I mean, there was never a king of Slovenia before.
Okay. French guy number 2 has another question. He says, I've recently become very interested in French Algeria and the Pied Noir. This led me down a bit of a rabbit hole. I was quite sad to discover that I could not find any evidence of missionary activity in North Africa or the Middle East. You would think that places like French Algeria and Syria, Italian Libya, and Spanish Morocco would have had a lot of missionary activity during a time when Catholic countries owned these areas, and presumably the missionaries would have had some degree of protection. So, was there any missionary activity in the Arab world during these times? If there was, what did it achieve, and why didn't it take to the populations there as it did in sub-Saharan Africa? And if there wasn't any missionary work, why not? I can't help but feel this was a missed opportunity to evangelize the Muslim world. God bless, and once again, congratulations to Vincent.
Well, that's another very good question. And it is a fascinating field, the Pied Noir in French North Africa and the Italian settlers in Libya. Very fascinating. Well, to answer your question, there were several problems at once. Firstly, Islam is unlike the native African religions, Islam is a very organized religion, and the penalty for leaving it is severe if they can catch you. Number one. Number two, the French and Italian and Spanish governments kind of had their hands full trying to keep the peace and keep the Muslims from revolting. When they did, they were a real problem. In Spanish Morocco, you had the Rif War that went on for 13 years. And remember, these people didn't have that many troops. During World War I, for instance, Marshal Lyotet, the Governor General of French Morocco, through hook and crook, was able to reduce the French garrison in Morocco to a very small number to send most of them to fight in World War I. But it could only do that by dint of not upsetting the native population. And wide-scale evangelization would have definitely upset them. That having been said, however, it's not that there wasn't any. In fact, there's a section of Algeria called Kabylia, Kabyle, Kabylia, inhabited by the Kabyles, who are not Arab but Berber, Muslim. But there was a concerted missionary effort among them, partly because they felt a great affinity to St. Augustine, who they thought of as a Berber. And there are, although a lot of them left, there are still 500 or more Catholic Kabyles living in Kabylie. But they were the largest, the Kabyle were the largest number that were converted. It was the same deal in Italy. And also remember that from 1878 to 1914, the French government was anti-clerical. And even though this didn't prevent them from supporting missionaries at home, it did mean that they would only support them so far. And you had the same problem for most of the time with the Italians in Libya. You only got a Catholic-friendly government in 1929, and it was Benito Mussolini. So that's why.
Right. Question from Robert. Greetings, gentlemen. I hope you and your families are all well. I am currently reading Before Church and State by Andrew Willard Jones. I think it was from the bibliography of Charles' Star-Spangled Crown. Right now, I'm at the chapter that discusses Counsel and Aid, or in Latin, Concilium et Auxilium. I'd like to hear Charles' thoughts regarding this medieval political concept and also his opinions on whether or not such a principle should be revived in modern politics. One opposition I can think of regarding this principle is that it might be an instance of respect of persons, which the Church and her doctors have condemned as contrary to justice. Is medieval counsel and aid a form of respect of persons instead of respect of laws? I also asked this question for I remember Charles describing monarchy and traditional regimes as personal government. Could such a personal government still respect objective laws instead of personal biases?
Well, I'll start with the end question first. The answer is yes, absolutely. I mean, the king was considered the servant of the law, and he had to rule in accordance with the laws of each of his provinces, which are very often quite different from each other. So the two by no means rule each other out. And then the same is true with the larger question. The Concilium et Exilium basically referred to a lord's gathering his vassals, particularly knights, together to get both advice and consent. In other words, it was sort of the parliament of your fiefdom. And as such, it dealt with immediate matters that were not usually addressed by the law. You know, what are we going to do about brigands in the neighborhood? What are we going to do about the failure of corn? What are we going to do about this and that? So again, that does not detract from an existing body of law because they coexisted. It's just that this was at a period when there really was not much in the way of a state. There was law, but there wasn't a state really. So if anything, this could be considered an early example of subsidiarity.
Right? Cal says, greetings to Don Vincenzo and his merry monarchist sidekick. I'm a new patron of Off the Menu and want to wish both of you gentlemen all the best, not just for the informative content, but for the entertainment that you've provided for me over the years as well. With that,
That'll be $5 for the Talent Pension Fund.
yes. With that being said, my question for Sir Charles is as follows. It is no secret that Henry VIII converted his kingdom and duchies to the Anglicanism as a result of the Pope denying him an annulment. My question is twofold in regard to this event. Number one, given the levels of political polarization that we see today regarding matters unrelated to religion, how is it that Henry VIII was able to convert large swaths of a Catholic nation to Protestantism so effectively without being deposed, or at least having his power minimized by an angry populace, in a method similar to King John and the signing of the Magna Carta?
Well, firstly, the England was in a very different situation. One thing to bear in mind is that prior to Henry VIII, his father had taken power in 1483 at the conclusion of a long and bloody civil war called the Wars of the Roses. And the end of the war brought kind of relief on the one hand, but on the other, still in living memory was what civil war was like. And it had been terrible. So a lot of people were not interested in doing another civil war again because they'd been there, done that. It had the added amusement value, though, that the sides that had drawn up on the previous Civil War bled into the Reformation in the sense that what was left of the Lancaster party tended to support Henry VIII. What was left of the York party tended to be Catholic recusants. You'll find that the areas there was opposition, there were rebellions and revolts against him, but they were not coordinated. And part of the reason for this is that remember that King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta by the barons and the bishops, but most of the barons had been decimated in the Wars of the Roses. So, and England was a more centralized country than it had been under King John, and the barons were no longer a source of opposition to the king. So there was not a power in the realm that could easily stand up to him. And when they did, they were divided, they weren't coordinated, and he knew what he wanted. And as we know from all revolutions, those who know what they want usually get it. Those who are sort of confused but just don't like it lose. The other thing, too, to bear in mind is that most of the bishops went along with the deal, all but one. And so the people that most folks were used to obeying said, do this. As Eamon Duffy, the author of The Stripping of the Altars, put it, we had a very similar thing in Ireland when I was a boy, because you see, the religion in Ireland was very similar to that of England before the Reformation. But the bishops came along and said, we're going to get rid of statues, we're going to get rid of Latin, we're going to alter the appearance of the church. And so people followed the bishops that they were used to obeying. That was, remember too, that with King John, the bishops had joined the noblemen in their rebellion. But in Henry's time, the barons were decimated, and most of them were his allies or his fathers, and the bishops, all but one, went along with the deal. So the common people were in a very different position. The faith lasted longer in those areas that we get to, Lancashire, the far west, Wales. Now, the irony here is that there was no real oligarchy to oppose Henry VIII as there had been to oppose King John. But Henry unwittingly created one by giving out the monastery lands that he stole to various supporters. And the children and grandchildren and great grandchildren of those supporters became the oligarchy that put Cromwell in power. So it's kind of ironic that it went that way. And what's also interesting is that the areas that resisted King Henry, the north, the west, Wales, the Highlands, the far-reaching of Ireland, were precisely the areas that rallied to Charles I. It's interesting also that when he died, when he was murdered, his French queen went back to France. When she died, the great Bishop Bossuet, in his sermon at her death, declared that Charles I's innocent blood had been an expiation of Henry VIII's crime.
Right. Why is it that most of mainland Britain seemed too willingly to convert to Anglicanism, while other parts of Henry VIII's dominion refused to convert, even when persecuted by the penal laws? This question applies to Ireland in particular. Seems that some regions were much more open to the idea of converting to Protestantism at the king's behest, despite its obvious break with the kingdom's religious tradition. Is there one particular reason for this, or are there many?
Well, as I touched on with the last question, yeah, there are several, but a big part of it was just how far away they were. And as I say, it's interesting to see that the areas that resisted Henry the most were the areas that supported King Charles I the most in the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. Kind of ironic if you think about it.
Okay, question from Vendée Radio, who says, Dear Charles, please could you share your opinion on the policy responses of lockdowns, surveillance, and draconian restrictions to the pandemic by nearly every Western government? What are your thoughts on the Great Reset and technocracy, the synthesis of Marxism and the money power, as the next stage in the revolution, as the true motivation behind the lockstep disproportionate response?
Well, firstly, let me say a few things. One is that I know a lot of medical people, and unlike most things, they're just not in agreement about the COVID and the vaccines or anything else. And these are people I've known for a long time and have great respect for. My suspicion then, because there's no agreement between them, my suspicion is that nobody really knows what they're doing. But government always feels the need to do something. And also remember that the current generation of leadership have never faced a real crisis. They want to get reelected, and they don't want to make a mistake. That's why when the Imperial College numbers came out last year, President Trump and a bunch of other people got all excited with them and very frightened, because in our day we tend to believe in experts unquestioningly. And now, of course, part of the difficulty is that no two jurisdictions are doing the same thing, and yet the numbers are not noticeably different between them. And this ranges all the way from Denmark and the Netherlands, which are totally open, to Australia, where everyone's as locked down as they were last year in the States. So it gives one the feeling that the leadership don't really know what they're doing, but are just sort of responding. As far as the great lockdown and all the rest of it goes, there may certainly be a good deal of ideological input on the part of the leadership along those lines. But you know, they're not really very smart. And this pandemic, like all others, no matter what you think of it, it will pass. And when it passes, and people are no longer frightened, there'll be a huge demand for answers. And I don't know what kind of answers those in charge are going to be able to give. We'll find out.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, exactly. Don't touch that dial. Keep it on all COVID all the time.
Right, our final question today is from Philip. He says, I'm fond of the Spanish brandy Carlos I. What are the best alcoholic brands named after royalty, and do any have historical sanction or significance?
I really can't think of any.
What about the Louis, what is it, Louis XIV?
Louis
The
XIII.
13th.
It's a cognac. It's very expensive. That's right. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. Your brother and I were once a rival gang to the Franchinis attempted to force us to. Well, they had us drink it, but then tried to force us to pay.
Yeah.
It didn't work out very well.
It's obscene, right? It's like $100 a glass or something. What is it?
900 a bottle or something.
900 a bottle, yeah.
So we, it was not a happy moment. Then he said he was just kidding, and he and his goons laughed and walked away.
Yeah,
it was a very weird afternoon. I mean, your brother and I both felt as though we'd sort of slipped into the twilight zone.
Yeah.
Because see, it was at an establishment that we're so used to going to, is like our living room,
Mm-hmm.
And we go in there, but at a different day and time than we were used to going. And the whole place felt weird.
Yeah.
It was just a freaky thing.
Yeah.
And this guy is sitting there at the bar all alone, and these two big goons standing on either side of him, just standing there, torpedoes.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah. We almost went to the mattresses over that one.
Well, if they had pulled anything, I mean, let's put it this way. If they had, shall we say, offed or even roughed up your brother and your uncle's favorite consigliere, I don't know what would have happened.
I think they know. Like, they know the rules. You don't.
They were in the wrong bar at the wrong time, messing with the wrong people.
Yeah.
They did back off, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, just kidding, just having some fun. And we smiled ironically and said, yeah, it was funny.
Okay, so any other? I feel like there has to be a couple others.
Well, there are, but I can't think of them. I can think there's, of course, Drambuie is not named after anybody, but it is a liqueur, the recipe of which were given to my kinsman, the McKinnons of Skye, by Bonnie Prince Charlie after Culloden when he sought refuge with them. And in return for the hiding him out, he gave them the recipe for his own private liqueur.
Wow.
Which they've been peddling ever since. And there's a cocktail named after Alfonso XIII of Spain called a King Alphonse. And my mother was very, very happy with it. She liked it very much. So liqueur glass, creme de cacao, and a cream header.
What's the story with Chateauneuf du Pape?
Well, Chateauneuf du Pape is a wine that's bottled in the area around Avignon. And if you remember when the popes were in Avignon, Chateauneuf du Pape was the wine that was developed for their table when they were in Avignon. And it's very good. And when they left, the wine, because the vineyards, they couldn't pack them up and take them to Rome. So we've had Chateauneuf du Pape ever since.
Where can I get a bottle of that? I've been wanting to get that for a long time. You can't get that at any normal place, can you?
Sure you can.
Can you?
Try Liquor Barn.
Or Bevmo?
I don't know about Bevmo. Liquor Barn should have it. I mean, you need a really booze-intensive place.
I see. Okay.
All right.
All right.
So,
That will do it for this episode.
well, no, I don't know about that.
What say you?
Well, okay. Let's think about this, shall we? It's going to be 2 weeks before we're able to do this again because I'm going to be in Denmark. And in case you're curious as to why I'm going to Denmark, are you curious?
Yeah, a little.
It's the Denmark Latin Mass Men's Club encampment.
Encampment?
Yeah.
What are you, raising an army?
No, it's sort of an outing kind of thing in a permanent camp place.
A permanent camp place?
Yeah.
What,
You
like
know,
with a fire, like in tents?
yeah, that kind of thing. And there'll be Tridentine masses every day, and a priest is going to give. It's kind of a combination retreat, uh, men's time off, kind of thing. There'll be masses every day. There'll be what do you call it? Conferences, as we would call them. And then in the evening, there'll be a bit to drink and a bit to smoke, tobacco.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty nice.
So I'll be getting to meet some of our fans in Denmark. Thank you very much.
All right, that sounds great.
People who watch the show in Denmark.
We have
What do
a
you think
bunch
of
of
that?
those. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we
pretty
do.
cool.
So we're going to be seeing them, but because we're going to be catering to the Danish fans, our fans of all of the nationalities are going to have to be going without for 1 week.
Sad.
Well, there are two ways that they can take revenge on the Danish contingent.
Okay.
One is to send money to the various pension funds for the, as it turns out, impoverished when retired tumbler house workers.
That's right.
The other possibility is that they can always invite me to their country and make sure it's over a weekend.
That's right. They're flying you out. They're flying you out. They're setting you up.
Well, they're setting me up, certainly, and for what, I don't know. And they're going to feed me, although not by hand. I was very strict about that. You know, when I get this from time to time when people say, "Oh, it's great, Mr. Coulombe, we'll feed you," and I have to tell them, "Well, that's nice that you're providing food, but I'd rather, do the work myself." And some of them get disappointed. Not many, actually. In fact, I can't really recall any of them getting disappointed.
Okay.
Anyhow, but as a shout out to all the Danes, that I'm looking forward to seeing you in just a few days. Actually, I'll have already. No, I won't. It's next week. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing you, and I guess I'll be seeing some of our Hungarian fans in Budapest. So
Yeah.
the ties that bind, gang. It's a United Nations of love.
All right. So the next time we'll be seeing everyone, it will be in October then.
Will it be in October?
Oh yeah.
Are you sure?
Yep. Because this is going out on the 20th. Then the one that we're skipping is the 27th, and then the following week will be the 4th.
Oh heavens! In that case, there's something else I have to tell you. This coming Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, Michaelmas Tide Ember Week. And then, to add insult to injury, September 29th, ladies and gentlemen, Michaelmas, the feast of St. Michael. Remember, it's one of the great, great, wonderful feast days we have. Michaelmas geese, Michaelmas daisies, Michaelmas everything. And don't pick blackberries after Michaelmas Day.
Why?
I don't know, just they say.
Oh. Okay. Good advice.
So, yeah. So I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'll miss you very much, and I'm sorry to have to do this, but every now and then we all have to sacrifice for the greater good. You, dear viewers, will be sacrificing because I won't be with you, and the Danes will be sacrificing because I will be with them.
Ah.
Wait a minute, huh? What? That raises a lot of questions, and two of them come immediately to mind.
Okay, go on.
You can't think of any questions?
I can think of questions. Do you want me to say the questions?
Yeah, why don't you ask questions?
What is it if it's Monday?
I should say it's off the menu.
But what about the soul you save?
I would say that after due consideration and giving it a great deal of thought, it's quite likely to be your own. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we shall see you in 2 weeks. St. Michael shall have come and gone, and we shall be in the October country, as Ray Bradbury puts it. In fact, why don't we send them off with Ray Bradbury's thing about the October country?
Very good.
All right. This, ladies and gentlemen, is from Ray Bradbury. He, as you know, he wrote a collection of, well, various collections of short stories. This one was called The October Country. And the description of the October Country is wonderful. What is the October Country? That country where it is always turning late in the year. That country where the hills are fog and the rivers are mist, where noons go quickly, dusks and twilights linger, and midnights stay. That country composed in the main of cellars, sub-cellars, coal bins, closets, attics, and pantries faced away from the sun. That country whose people are autumn people, thinking only autumn thoughts, whose people passing at night on the empty walks sound like rain. The October Country, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming up. Get prepared. The drum beat till Halloween. It's all there, as the great amazing Criswell would say, it's all there in your amazing future.
All right, everyone. We will see you next time.
Take care. Be good. Bye bye.